Hi everyone. So in today's video, I want to show how I draw a car like this. So let's start a bit. So what I usually do is I start with perspective lines, or actually I start with a rough sketch. So I'm now going to trace this one because of course normally I don't draw on top of the car. But what I do in this stage is very roughly, I draw in the big shape of the car. So let's just do this quickly. So something like this, and then I imagine where are the boxes and how does the car look, and so on. So of course, and normally I do this then more like this. So then I think about the big shapes, and I will show in a bit more about the steps in later. But basically, I start with a sketch, something like this. So I start with something like the sides, and then here the big shapes. Then I start with the perspective from my mind. So I don't draw any lines and stuff like that. So I save that for later. So, and then when I have a sketch like this, let's put it on top of here. So when I have a sketch like this, I make a new layer with this button in Photoshop. And I take this line. And then I trace, then I make these kinds of perspective lines. So here, and I think something like this. Let's see with the original drawing, because I want to align it up with this one. So then I start, for example, the line is going here, and you see, I can't, yeah, it just fits, barely. So I make these lines and let them come to this point, like this. And then I make some more. So I do this with the line tool, and I put it on pixels, the line tool. So making all these lines, and it's just up to you how many you want. I like to have the like this because then there's still a lot of information, but at the same time it's not too crazy. So then I make the second perspective point, and I think in this case I need to make the canvas bigger, or maybe not. How far this? Yeah, here you see it's outside of the canvas. So I take this tool, canvas tool, and I make the canvas a bit bigger. Press enter, make this space wide with the bucket tool, G. And let's look at this. So again, yeah, I want a green color, so I press Alt, then you get the color or the eyedropper. So then I start making more lines and see where that point goes to. So somewhere, you can see it really goes far. And this is the second finishing point, and that one is the first. So it's something like there. And then here, here, and here. So then I have the first, or maybe this is the first and this is the second point. So let's draw that. So this then is the first vanishing point, and this is the second vanishing point. So when you have that, and let's see here, then you have this sketch. So when you have the rough sketch, you can put the rough sketch transparency a bit down, and then you can create the big shapes first. So then I start with creating these big shapes in perspective, a bit like this. And then on top of this as well. So here we see basically two shapes. And you see I follow those perspective lines. Here this green line. This one doesn't go straight down, it is a bit skewed. So something like this. So this also goes a bit upwards. So basically this is the first shapes. Like this. Then maybe at the wheels, give them those a bit different color. So it's also going, let's do them then a bit in this perspective. In the third perspective point, I just eyeball a bit. So, but what you basically see me doing is I use a lot of basic shapes like cylinders and balls and stuff like that. Just take again a different color for what's on top. So something like this. Here's the box. Something like this. And normally I take way more time for this to create. And I think I do this in a bit more sketchier manner, but I wanted to show a bit the different steps. So when I have the big shapes first, so these are all the big shapes. Then let's just put all this in a folder, put this down. And then with sketch brush, so I have all these different brushes here. So I take this sketch brush and then I start adding details, and I keep those perspective in mind. So for example, the glasses of the car, something like this. Here this frame. So now I start sketching everything in over those big shapes. So start with the big shapes and then go on the smaller details. And that's basically how I draw these kind of cars. And basically that's also all the perspective I use also for indoor drawings and stuff like that. So then I just start to adding things a bit in here and here. And I start adding details in it. And of course I use a lot of reference. So if I draw a car, I look up some, for example, for this one, I looked up some old cars. And then I look on, oh, how does this handle look? Or how does this, this front plate looks. So using reference is certainly not bad. Or how does these window washers look? So boxes, and then I start drawing the boxes on top of it. the dishwasher, and then start. But in this phase, I start still sketchy. So when I've made the final sketch, and this is a bit in the perspective I want, then I start inking it. And I do that with an inking brush. So I put the transfer off. And then I start with the final lines. So something like this. And then draw just on top. And then you can turn these off. Then you have those. Then you can have those final lines. For example, I showed it here. And this just a bit quickly. But then, yeah, then I will have the final lines. And of course, I make a layer behind it. And then I will color it. And I do that with the lasso tool. You can see some of my older or my other videos about coloring, so I won't go too much in depth into it, and then I fill it. So that is basically how I draw a car like this. And in this case, actually, I used 3D. I made this in Blender. So I started with this sketch. But before that, I started with making small thumbnail sketches and designed that in Maya and drew on top of this car to get it. But what I also sometimes do is start with where's the rough sketch? Start with the rough sketch. I think I had some more rough sketch. Yeah, here, this one. So usually I start with a rough sketch like this. And then I add the perspective, these lines. And then I start drawing the basic shapes. And then when I have that, because these shapes are in right perspective, then I start making the final sketch. And the final sketch I ink, and then last step I add color on it. So that's a short tutorial about how I draw these things. And if you want to see more of those tutorials and more longer, you can go to my Patreon site. So patreon.com/Mitch Leeuw, and there I give weekly lessons. And this week it's about drawing perspective. So you can check that out. And I also have some books on Patreon, on Gumroad, so gumroad.com/Mitch Leeuw, and there you can find some books, and where I also explain this kind of stuff. So go over to those sites for more stuff, and I put the links down under the video. And please like this video if you liked it, and add any question. Maybe you can tell me what you would like to see in the next video, or what if you like this one. Should it be longer or shorter, or more detailed, or simple, more simple? Tell me, let me know. And yeah, if you like it, subscribe so I can make more of these videos. So thanks everyone. I hope you like this. Bye.